Just making sure we're recording. Making sure we're recording on this one. Hey, everybody. Mike and Tim here. Welcome to the Voxology Podcast. So glad that you are tuning in and are grateful, as always, that anybody besides our immediate family listens to this thing. So thank you. Let alone the people who support us. Thank you to our Patreon and Tithely supporters. You guys are amazing. Thank you for adding or just saying that this has value for you. We're so very grateful for all of the ways that we can expand and put a lot of time and energy into this, even though it may not always sound like it. There is time and there is energy. And so Mike here, Tim, give us a thumbs up. This is what we used to do around the dining room table. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, and thumbs medium from your week this week. Thumbs up, something good. Thumbs down, something bad. Thumbs medium, it was something.
Wow. We do a high-low aha in our house. Give me your high, your low, and something you learned.
Ooh.
Already laughed at.
Okay, I like that.
Thumbs up. Man, you always catch me off guard while we're recording, and then my brain goes, floop.
Well, yeah, you really want to script this part, Tim?
Yes.
You really want to script it? This is intended to feel like conversation.
Oh, I see. Finished that bathroom remodel this week. The bathroom is done.
It has been how many months?
Too many.
Congratulations.
Since
you did
like
most
mid-June.
of the work yourself.
About 80% of it.
Yeah. So
it actually looks nicer than I imagined.
Hey, the congratulations. That's got to feel really good.
It does feel good. Yeah.
Okay. Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Kid had strep all week, which complicates life.
It certainly does, man. Yes. Yep. Thumbs medium.
Thumbs medium. You know what else was a thumbs up? You're missing it.
What?
Ahsoka. It's really good. It's tying together like all this nerd lore and other things together all in one, and they're doing a pretty good job with it.
Is it over?
There's one more episode.
Okay. So I will binge that, cancel my Disney Plus subscription.
But Loki's coming out in a week.
I don't care. The MCU has lost me forever. I don't care.
Wow. Jeez.
Yep. I mean, there isn't one thing they've done, except maybe WandaVision, that since the culmination of the first 22 that has been interesting. Now, I know, and I know that's blasphemous, and that's totally fine. But like the Marvels, what is it, Miss Marvel or the Marvels coming out in November? Mm-hmm. No, don't care. Eternals.
Miss Marvel was great, though. That was a fun show.
Didn't care. Okay. I mean, great.
Did you say Turtles?
Well, wasn't it the teenage? No, wasn't it the Eternals? Dork.
Yeah. Oh well, Turtles, because we just watched the new Ninja Turtles movie, and it's really fun. Okay.
There was somebody in our YouTube comments who is a very sweet person who loves the podcast, who just simply said, "Hey, could you timestamp when it is that you guys start talking about something real?" And she probably speaks for a lot of us when it comes to that. Like, they're not tuning in for Tim's thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs medium, which I am. Like, we dial each other and then we just hit record.
Yeah. Well, Tom Petty always said, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus."
Oh man, I've always said that when I've written songs. Absolutely. That's funny. Anyway, so we've got a great email from one of our patrons who gave us permission to read this. It is a long one, but it raises something that I think is really good and something that we haven't talked a lot about. Mike and Tim, thank you for your ongoing study of Revelation. It's been some of the most affecting explanation of the hardest parts of the Bible I've heard recently. Awesome. Your discussion on Monday, the 25th of November's episode regarding how we connect the perspectives of judgment in Revelation with the rest of the Bible and Jesus' example reminded me of a recent disagreement I had with a fellow Christian. I was hoping you could give some more direction on this. I recognize my question may be premature if you'll address it in the forthcoming episode about the martyrs, or maybe you did explain it in Monday's episode and I just didn't comprehend it. we were reading and discussing the imprecatory Psalms. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with that language, there are certain Psalms where the psalmist will say things like, God, would you dash the infants of my enemy? Would you dash those infants against the rocks? Would you destroy my enemy? And that could be someone, that was a fellow Israelite who, I'm thinking of David hiding in caves and wishing harm upon his enemies, or it could be Israel, after calamity has happened through the invasion of another nation, wishing that upon their other nation. So there is a category of Psalms called imprecatory Psalms where you're almost praying for justice to be done in terms of like wrath, God's wrath against evildoers. So we were reading and discussing the imprecatory Psalms, as you do with friends. And he asserted that the desire to see our enemies' destruction is a godly attitude, emphasizing a through line between those passages in the imprecatory Psalms, the prayer of the martyrs in Revelation, and the wrath of God described by the prophets. So his argument is, wishing for their destruction is a good thing. We see that in the prophets, we see that in the imprecatory Psalms, and we're seeing it in the martyrs in the book of Revelation. He asserted that if we are faithful Christians who care about justice and the body of Christ, we should echo the prayers of the martyrs and also be calling for God's judgment to rain down on those who do evil. Otherwise, we aren't taking evil seriously and don't truly care about wanting to see God put the world right. That, for instance, we should feel a sense of satisfaction when a violent dictator is put to death.
Wow.
As you yourself said in Monday's episode, judgment is something we as Christians should be happy about and looking forward to. Now I'm going to clarify that because I did not mean it in the way that that's being heard. So thank you for forcing me to clarify that. What is good about God's judgment isn't that our enemies are destroyed. What's good about the judgment of God is that the people who have put their faith in Jesus will be vindicated. And part of the vindication is the judgment of God against evil. No question about that. But I don't ever see God expressing a bloodthirsty desire to get even with his enemies. Now, there are some Old Testament passages that certainly seem like that, and certainly in the imprecatory Psalms. But as we've talked about before, the imprecatory Psalms are written not from God's point of view, but from a human point of view.
Yeah, very important.
And it is incredibly human to want our enemies destroyed.
Yeah.
Amen. But when I was suggesting that in like the New Testament, judgment is good news, what I meant by that isn't, yes, it's going to be great to see your enemies destroyed. What I mean instead is to say, I cannot wait for the day where evil is undone, justice is overthrown, oppression will cease, and all of the tears wiped from our eyes. The problem with just wishing harm on my enemies is that takes me out of the equation as a fellow sinner and as someone who has harmed and has been an enemy to others myself. So let me I just insert that little caveat there, and then he goes on. He said, as a counterpoint to my friend's stance, I emphasize that Jesus taught us to love our enemies and pray for the redemption of those who do evil against us, not their punishment. You are absolutely right. That we should be following Jesus' example to ask God to forgive those who do evil rather than pray for God to smite them for their actions. Absolutely. This is the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When we would rather bless those who persecute us than harm them, and we would rather love our enemies than to seek their ruin. You bet. He goes on. He says, not that we should be passive in letting evil flourish. We talked about this. Yeah, this is totally Sermon on the Mount. Turning your cheek or lending to someone who asks, those aren't passive stances. Those are very creative imaginings of goodness that we, again, talked about years ago. But that Jesus taught us to break the cycle of violence and suffering and thus disarm the power of evil And the way that we do that is through sacrificial love rather than craving vengeance and desire for retribution. I couldn't agree with you more. You are saying the counterpoint beautifully. If we hope that God will give unbelievers their just deserts in a penal sense of justice, we will be less open to showing them God's love. Absolutely. There is no place where Jesus roots for the destruction of his enemies. Absolutely. But Revelation has me questioning if that's a correct understanding. If that's what you're getting from our teaching on Revelation, then we're teaching it wrong. Because what you're saying is being seen through the slain lamb. Yes, the martyrs are crying out for judgment. Absolutely. Absolutely. And judgment does come against Rome. No question about it. But is that something we're to be rooting for and delighting in when it happens? I don't see that part. Essentially, my question is, how should we as Christians read and understand this yearning for judgment against the wicked that is expressed throughout the scripture in light of the gospel? That's a wonderful question. So there you go, Tim. Go for it.
That whole thing to me, especially as my understandings of what I think sin and salvation, that kind of stuff, have broadened or morphed a little bit over the last couple of years. I see that whole conversation as a difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking again, because the peacekeeping, you would just want things to be, is it smited or is it smote?
Yes.
Exactly. You would want that to happen because you want to keep the scales balanced, and it'd be like a keeping of the peace. And the peacemaking, like forgiveness, walking with your enemies, loving your enemies, like that is such an active stance. And so I just see that at the root of that whole thing. You know what else I was thinking too is, like, we talked about this before, but with in the Chronicles of Narnia, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that scene with Edmund when he's the dragon and he has to keep using his claws to peel away layers and layers and layers of the dragon skin. It's so painful and it hurts him so bad. And eventually it gets to the point where he's ripped off all the dragon flesh and he's just Edmund again. Mm-hmm. I wonder if judgment doesn't work like that sometimes, where it's like, it's this painful process of peeling evil off of you to restore you to Edmund, to be your human, your full human self again. But that's a pain, depending on the size of the dragon and the immensity of the scales, that could be a really, really painful process.
Absolutely.
And it would really color the way we see judgment, because we would see it as a smiting, the way we understand it.
The Bible would present that as mercy.
Yes.
When God intervenes, it's mercy. When he abandons, it's judgment. But we'll get back to that in a second. That's a great point, Tim. So let's unpack this a little, maybe theologically, shall we? So Jesus is the paradigm for what it is to be a human being.
Yeah.
And as we look at Jesus, he did not manufacture enemies, and anyone who would have been considered, in Jewish terms, his enemy, Jesus was very much open to. Whether it was a centurion whose servant was suffering, whether it was a Gentile woman whose daughter was possessed, anytime he came around the Samaritan woman, anyone who would have been considered naturally outside of his sphere of care or kinship, Jesus almost made it a point, if they were willing, to engage with them and extend status to them and acceptance to them. The ones who he had the most affinity with, of course, some of the teachers of the law, the scribes, the religious leaders, they got very sharp words because they were convinced in their own righteousness, their own rightness before God. And so Jesus does the dragon thing there, where he has to expose, the hollowness of their righteousness before they will open themselves up to the rightness that he's proclaiming of the kingdom. And so, but in all senses, Jesus is acting redemptively.
Yes.
Now, Jesus is and says he will come back as judge. He even talks about that in Jerusalem when you see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. and his angels with him. He will talk about the destruction of the Jerusalem and his judgment on this generation of sinners. So Jesus as judge, of course, is a motif. But it's fascinating because the judgment that Jesus levies are all the upside down kind of judgments that reflect the upside down nature of the kingdom, right? The blessed, the ones are the meek and the poor in spirit and the peacekeepers and the merciful, and the ones who are cursed are the ones who are self-righteously excluding the others from getting into the kingdom.
Totally.
Right? So even Jesus as judge takes on a vastly different color than what we would normally think of as judge. I mean, Jesus even tells parables about how scandalously gracious God is in terms of his, he'll pay somebody that works a full day $100, and then somebody shows up in the last 15 minutes and he'll pay them $100 too. And was he unjust? No, he kept his word to every worker that he would pay them $100. Some workers just worked more and complained. And Jesus has this beautiful point of, well, it's the owner's money. He can do whatever he wants to. He's not unjust in showing mercy. And in fact, in Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount, the difference between the children of God versus the children of the world is exactly in their capacity to show mercy. If you only love those who love you, Jesus said, what good is that? Even tax collectors do that. If you only show love to people who show love to you, anybody can do that. But you go love your enemy, not wishing harm upon them. Love your enemy and do good to them. And in that way, you will be like children of your Father in heaven. As the scriptures say, be merciful because he is merciful.
Yeah, it's huge.
So that teaching, and as it refracts through the practice of Jesus and life of Jesus, then shades the way that we understand everything before and after,
yes,
as it should.
Yep.
So do there seem like there are texts in the Old Testament where God is the bloodthirsty ancient Near Eastern king wanting to get drunk on the blood of his enemies? Yes, and the great debate is, are those the words of the humans, or are those the words of God? And we've talked about that a lot in previous episodes. We won't revisit that territory again. But we will simply say this, that what Revelation does, as we've talked about a couple of times now, is it takes the violent imagery of the day of the Lord motif, but it flips it around. The one who's executing the day of the Lord is the Lamb who was slain, and who engages in the destruction and judgment of the nations through a sword coming out of his mouth, metaphorically through his word is the picture. And that the army of God consists of those who've been martyred unto death. They've been faithful even into death, and that they do no fighting. Jesus just shows up with his identity written on his robe and the word, whatever that word is, and there it is. Business is taken care of. But the fact that Jesus has a robe that's already been dipped in blood, and we know from every other picture of Jesus in the book that it's his own blood, right? That what we get is this weird image, the subverting image of military imagery, violent imagery that's subverted now around a lamb that was slain. And it's done very much on purpose. So that's a long answer to simply say,
well, it's a thick question.
It is a thick question, deserving of a thick answer. And by thick, we mean THICC, evidently, is how you spell thick. That as children of Jesus, we never wish harm on our enemies. It is very human to do so. Absolutely. And what's great about the Psalms is that they allow God's people to cry out that way to God. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
In every different way to cry out to God. That God's big enough to take all that kind of anger and sadness and fear.
God, would you just, and I think there are places where it would be right to say, God, would you, would it have been wrong to pray against Adolf Hitler? I don't think so.
Well, and that's the thing too with your thing with the turn the other cheek, right? Like, So everything comes down to not being passive, but being active. And then we kind of took that and ran with apologetics or something like that, where we're like, oh, okay, this is what active means. It means go out and pick fights or go try to, show people what they're doing wrong. But it seems like it is more about peacemaking, but sometimes peacemaking is forcing that hand to smack you open-handed.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. So that seems to be a theme throughout so much of it. Do you think, so Jesus, remember him? He became a lens for us to understand God, right? Like he was the
Correct.
full manifestation of God. Is Jesus also a lens for God to more understand us?
That's a great question.
Is that a two-way lens?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question.
I don't either.
In one sense, is there new information in the universe that God doesn't know yet?
Was it experiential information?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because remember when Gambas, he was on one of our episodes and he was like, omnipotent, omnipresent, whatever. He's like, those words aren't even in the Bible. Like, he started going off about God being all knowing or all, I don't know. It was like these kind of different, he was pushing back a little bit on that language.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but
those certainly are Greek terms.
Yeah. And then the way that the Psalms are reflective, very human reflective.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about the other day with, again, I brought this up the last 4 episodes with your conversation with Sky, but with those, I think it's a really important point, and it reflects again here the idea that the Old Testament might not be a full revelation of God, but that Jesus is. You're getting windows.
I would say the Old Testament's a true revelation of God, and Jesus treats it as such.
Right.
But I don't know that it's a full revelation, like you said. I think that's a good distinction. And this is all territory we've wandered around in for episodes, so we won't spend any more time on it except to say, man, what a phenomenal question. And I will try to be clear that when I say judgment is good news, it's not good news. It would be like, let's say somebody, let's say someone close to me dies of cancer, and then all of a sudden, and so I hate, in this kind of abstract way, I hate cancer. I want it to be crushed.
This is the exact
and destroyed.
example I just had in my head before you said it. It's weird.
Dude, some people say we share one brain. Maybe. And it could be true. Could be true. Yep, exactly. Do I want cancer to be destroyed? Yes, because I hate what it does to God's image bearers. Mm-hmm. Do I want the image bearers destroyed? No. So I look at sin and death as principalities and powers that humans conspire with, I personally conspire with, and there is much harm that is done. Yeah. And so I yearn for the day when those things are destroyed. And as we'll see, it's funny. Only the beasts and this great dragon are said to be tortured forever in the lake of fire. Mm-hmm. No human is ever said to be tortured forever. It's just interesting.
Uh-oh, hot takes.
I mean, we'll get there. Okay. So great stuff. Today, we are going to make just a tiny bit of progress in Revelation because we have to deal, and I don't think we have. If we have, I'm so sorry. But I don't think we've dealt with this idea of rapture. And one of the things that Revelation is known for is at least in my circles, the dispensational sort of view has been, its emphasis on the Great Tribulation, the rapture, the millennium, and the Antichrist.
Yep.
And it was shocking to me that Antichrist, that word is nowhere in Revelation. Neither is the word rapture. Millennium gets maybe 6 verses out of 400.
Wild.
Yeah. So we were talking last episode about these cycles of plagues and these like cycles of Day of the Lord, and that there were these interludes about how the judgment didn't bring the nations to repentance, but the witness of the church will. So I want to next episode deal with the witness of the church in the midst of these. But before we do, we have to at least, I think, argue that the conception of the rapture, that the church has left earth during this period and is now exclusively in heaven. It doesn't mean people aren't coming to Jesus in this view. It just means that those that are already have been zapped up. I wonder, this is what I taught was in the Bible, and this is what I was taught mattered. And if you question this, you're sort of questioning everything. And then years ago, I don't remember how or where, but I read an article by N.T. Wright that was like, hey, not sure that's the right way to approach this. And that spun me into this massive amount of looking at this going, all right, I don't think this is the way. But so much of my childhood as a child of the 80s was built around always being ready, praying the prayer because you didn't want to go to hell, always being insurance. Ready, and the Antichrist was coming. I mean, it was the European Union. I remember when that thing got together. My goodness, that made news. The first Gulf War in the 90s. I mean, that was biblical. I mean, and even I was scrolling Instagram, and very well-known pastors, some of whom I would like personally respect, are just like, yep, it's heating up, guys. It's getting hot out there. And that's just it's not how this thing works. And it's not just Mike, and Tim, conspiracy theorists following, Q somewhere, making this stuff up. Like, these are deep veins of scholarship that have been available for years and years and years. And for some reason, we just don't ever access them and take those veins of scholarship seriously. Because I think the money's too good, the fear's too good, the control's too good, or maybe we just don't even know there's another biblical option for this. So what I want to do today is I want to define the terms first. Secondly, I want to look at two major verses that that are used to justify this idea, and then read back into Revelation. And then that's going to set up the question, okay, so if the church is still on earth while all of this is happening, what's the role of the church? And the martyrs in heaven clue us into the role of the church in the world. So that'll take the next two episodes. Are you with me?
Yeah, Tribulation Force, go.
Go! First of all, let's talk about the rapture. The word means to carry off. And the rapture is that event where the faithful remnant of true Christians are taken bodily into the sky with the returning Jesus. So Jesus comes down, we join him in the air, and then he escorts us into the heavens.
Sounds awesome.
So that it does. So that we can escape the force of God's wrath poured out on unbelievers down on the earth.
What did you read that from?
What do you mean?
That
I don't know. These are just summaries I wrote down.
Oh, look at you go.
I mean, I'm sure they're
like
from
a
somewhere.
very well-formed definition.
Well, remember that whole thing we just did about preparation and time and energy?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That we actually spend time on this?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it sounds like it some days. Other days we are like, oh, shoot, we need to put something out.
That
what do you want to talk
never
about
happens.
today, Tim? It never happens. All right, so that's the rapture. Then there is a period of time called the tribulation. And in the traditional kind of dispensational environment I grew up in, represented by the Left Behind series, the tribulation is the 7-year reign of the Antichrist. And never mind that numbers are symbolic, that we'll get to, sevens and all of this crazy stuff. But it's a 7-year reign. The first 3.5 years are good. And the second 3.5 years, the Antichrist reveals himself and begins to persecute whatever remnant is left on earth of, Christians. And so he almost claims, like he dedicates the temple to himself and claims divine prerogatives. And so there is a lot of discussion about what's the relationship between the rapture and the tribulation. Does the rapture happen before the 7 years? in which case that's called pre-trib. The church goes up with Jesus and misses the entire tribulation. Or you have something called mid-trib, where the rapture happens at the 3.5 year mark, where the first 3.5 years are okay, and then the second 3.5 years, the Antichrist reveals himself, and then the church is raptured, so that the next 3.5 years, where God's wrath is poured out, they miss that part.
Yeah.
Or is it post-trib, that the church is raptured after the 7 years is up? So you have the rapture happening, and then where does it happen relative to the tribulation? It can happen at the beginning, middle, or end. Then we introduce a third term called the millennium. This is something we'll read about in chapter 20, and it gets 6 verses. Totally disproportionate to the American imagination around this, but it is the belief that Christ will return with his church and literally reign on the earth for 1,000 years. Okay? Mm-hmm. With the saints. So the tribulation happens, and then Jesus comes back with the saints, and they reign for 1,000 years. Then there's this great battle called the Battle of Armageddon, when Satan is loosed back into the world and gathers an army, and then we finally defeat Satan, and then there's a great white judgment. That's kind of how I was always, it was always explained to me that way. Now, the millennium is that 1,000-year period where Christ reigns with the saints on the earth. And the question is, well, what's the relationship between the rapture and tribulation and the millennium? So you have premillennial. This is what I was raised in. That the tribulation happens before the millennium.
Right.
And that can either be, I was a mid-trib, premillennial dispensationalist. So the rapture happened in the middle of the tribulation, and the tribulation happened before the millennium.
That's a lot of titles. Right? Yeah.
It's a lot of titles. So when does the rapture happen? Well, it could be at the beginning of the 7 years, middle, or end. When does that happen relative to the millennium? Well, it could be before the millennium or after the millennium, right? So you have pre-millennial and post-millennial, and then you have another view called amillennial. In other words, we're not talking about a physical reign at all of Jesus on the earth. Jesus already reigns. He says at the end of Matthew, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. Yeah. He already reigns over the earth. And so what we're talking about is a kind of like spiritual, like now and not yet sort of reigning. And if I had to, be placed in any of those, I would be placed there. I just think that there is no such thing as the millennium at all. Yeah. In terms of a 1,000-year period. I think 1,000 is symbolic. This is how apocalyptic literature works. We'll get there when we get there. All right. So those set of concepts, rapture, tribulation, and millennium, thrown together with the Antichrist, cooks up this incredibly amazing stew of conspiracy theory and fear-mongering and all those sorts of things. The rapture is never mentioned in the book of Revelation. It has to be read into it. So people will read a couple of different places into it that the church is now raptured. And they'll say typically that happens after Jesus talks to the first century church, the 7 churches in Asia Minor. And then after this, I looked and I was told, here's what must come after. And that's when the rapture happened. Now the church is, in heaven with God. And there are 2 New Testament, maybe more, but these are the 2 big ones that I know of that are used to justify rapture theology. All right? How are you hanging in there, Timothy?
I love it. I love how convoluted it all is.
Oh, it's beautiful. And it's actually one of the things when you put the whole package together, like if we could find somebody who came in and was just like, bro, let me just explain how simple this is. It's actually pretty airtight. Once you grant the hermeneutical assumptions that they have to make about how you read Revelation,
right?
They have a great kind of airtight sort of system if you grant all those assumptions, which is why we spent so much time questioning all of those assumptions before we started.
That when Jesus does things, it's always like, or just look at the Sermon on the Mount. we spent 19 episodes on that, and how did it wrap up? He's like, so basically just this.
Yeah.
But he tries to really there's a lot to it, but it boils down to these simple ideas, and he keeps hitting those. And then now it's like, are you post?
Totally disproportionate to the amount of time Revelation talks about this.
You just look at Jesus's words versus the Da Vinci Code.
Right.
And just like this puzzle that you have to solve. And
seriously. And we love that stuff as Americans.
Fun.
We love it. Absolutely. It's entertaining. And that's why it feels so good to be a teacher or preacher who has the secret knowledge. Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
And what we're saying is, I think the insider knowledge is there is no insider knowledge. You just actually have to have read your Old Testament. Right. Which turns out to be insider knowledge.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Does that frame Jesus so often being like, never mind, go ahead.
Oh, I love where your brain was going there. I love it. But let's do, I just got to get through these two texts.
That was going to be a tangent, so.
Oh, man. All right.
Working it.
So the first one is from 1 Thessalonians. Let me read the whole thing. 1 Thessalonians 4. Let me read the whole thing, and then we'll look at some of the words. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of humanity who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring Jesus. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. So the Thessalonians are asking, what happens to the dead? Because they're preaching Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. Great. But what happens to the dead? Paul says they come with him, which is great news. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead will rise first. You don't have to worry about them. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and we will be with the Lord forever. So it sounds like, just reading it in English, hey, what happens to those who have died in Jesus? Don't worry, Paul says. Jesus died and rose again, and he's coming again, and he'll actually be bringing the dead with him. In fact, they will be the ones who will acknowledge his coming first. They will actually meet him in the sky, and after that, all of us will meet him in the sky too. And then we will be with him forever. And you're like, well, okay, it's in the air. It's up, so that totally makes sense. And you can see how you could look at that and go, oh yeah, this seems like an event that is yet to have happened, because everyone up until this point's died, where Jesus will come back with the dead in him, and we'll all meet with him together and be together. Awesome. The issue, not surprisingly, is that what appears often really clear in English isn't always that clear in Greek. And I know people hate this. But it's like, listen, when I go traveling internationally, I went to the Philippines years ago. What I don't do is demand that they talk in my language using my terms and my currency. I don't just imperiously walk around saying, well, how come I can't pay you in dollars? No, you could, but you become a student of the culture in order to understand it. Yeah. And that's part of the humility of being a good traveler. Well, this is the same thing we have to do with the text, right? Most of us don't know Greek, or if we know Greek, we don't know Greek the way they knew Greek.
Right.
And so there's just loads of work we got to do. So there are three words that are really at issue here. The first word is the word that we translate the coming in verse 15. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord. Now that word is a form of the word parousia or parousia, but I think it's parousia. It's how you pronounce it. And it's like the coming. Now, in some places in the Bible, it means arrival. Just straight up like the arrival of the Lord. And that's an example there is in 1 Corinthians 16. The problem, though, is the coming, parousia, or parousia, actually has a more technical meaning that is much better here when we look at two other phrases that are used. So the three phrases we're going to look at paint a picture that if it was just one of the phrases by themselves, it wouldn't be as compelling. But because all three are used here, I think it's painting the exact opposite picture of what the Rapture folks would have us, have us believe. So the more technical meaning of parousia is when it refers to the arrival of a dignitary visiting a vassal territory. So if a king is going to visit a conquered territory, that is called a parousia. And so one of the great examples of this is from Josephus, who was a Jewish historian in the first century. And I'm just going to read a little bit here, but it'll give you the flavor of how the word was used. So Alexander the Great visited Jerusalem in 332 BC. All right. Alexander had already conquered the other places in the region, Damascus, Sidon, Tyre, and he intended on passing through Judea on his way to Egypt. Jaded, the Jewish high priest, had previously refused a request from Alexander the Great for tax payments and supplies for his troops. So he didn't think Alexander was going to win and bet on the other guys. And as history knows, he bet wrong. So Alexander is now coming to Jerusalem to pay this high priest a visit. So the high priest who rebuffed Alexander years before, now getting paid a visit from Alexander the Great. Jaded, this high priest, had a dream indicating that he should adorn the city with wreaths and open the gates and go out and meet Alexander's party, and that the people should be in white garments. Jaded acted according to his dreams as he prepared for the parousia of Alexander the Great. So here parousia is used as a arrival of a foreign dignitary. And I think that's the way it's being used here for reasons we'll talk about, in just a second. So the first word is the coming of the Lord, the parousia of the Lord. It can mean flatly arrival, but N.T. Wright and others make the case that it's a technical term that means the arrival of a dignitary or a visiting benefactor, someone who's superior and is being received. Now, the second phrase or word is this idea that we'll be caught up together. So when in verse 17, Paul says, after that, we are still alive and our left will be caught up together with them in the clouds. Caught up together is interesting because air and clouds don't mean air and clouds whenever they're used regarding the second coming of Jesus. So when Jesus talks about coming on the clouds of heaven, that's a Daniel 7 image about the vindication of the Son of Man. That doesn't mean literally look up at the white things in the sky. When Paul talks about the air, he's talking about a sphere of authority. So in Ephesians 2, he talks about we are by nature slaves to the prince of the power in the air, or of the air. And so air there doesn't mean Satan is the god of oxygen. Air is in reference to like authority over the earth. So that Jesus would come and he would catch us up with him in the air means that Jesus is demonstrating his authority over the earth. And the word caught up here means to be seized or claimed, as an owner would claim or seize property that is his. All right, so the picture is the owner coming back and claiming authority and possessions that were his previously. Make sense?
Yeah. Over
And then
land that's been governed by other.
Yes. And it totally fits with Jesus's parables about, a man went away, a king went away, and a vineyard owner, was running the vineyard in his absence and was evil and blah, 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 blah. And the king came back and dealt with it.
Yep.
The third word, and this is the kicker, all right? This is the one where you're like, okay, the word is to meet. We will meet the Lord in the air, all right? Now, this Greek word is when... it refers to a meeting outside of the city gates where a delegation would escort the dignitary back into the city. All right. So, a guy named, Gene Green. All right. Yeah. Perfect name. He speaks for a lot of scholarship when he says this was almost a technical term that described the custom of sending a delegation outside the city to receive a dignitary who was on the way to town.
Yeah.
All right. So the first word is parousia. It can mean just the arrival, but it can also mean the arrival of a dignitary that you have to prepare to meet. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the dignitary has authority. So we meet him in the air or in the clouds. He claims or seizes those that are his in the air, the place of authority. And then thirdly, the word that is used to meet, that delegation meets him in the air and then escorts him into their city.
Yep.
In other words, the picture that the Greek words paint is of a delegation that meets a king outside of their city and escorts the king into their city. So the picture I think that Thessalonians is painting is that the dead will rise and that those who are alive will meet Jesus in the sphere of authority, the air, and then escort him to the earth where he lives forever and ever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. No problem then. So you don't have to take my word for this. This is all stuff you can look up online or in commentaries, Greek dictionaries. But it's surprising that we've leveraged a couple of verses that turned out to have other more like reasonable explanations into this whole weird American-centric fear-based theology.
Well, was it Plato that was like, hey, the written word's going to kill us all? Hey guys. Because everything was oral. Like all information was memorized and given to each other. And so he was like, once you write it down, we're going to become so dumb because we don't know anything that humanity is going to cease to exist. It was one of those guys. But it's funny because you can almost see that in here where it's like, I wonder how much of this, like, all the context came with it.
Yeah.
And then we just, since we don't give these stories to each other, we don't hand this volume of information down generationally like it used to be, then maybe now people just do open and they interpret a verse on face value and then build. But it's so interesting.
How could you not? We're told that's what we're to do. Right. Of course, I did this for you. I mean, open your Bible and read it devotionally. One of the most important ways you can grow in your relationship with Jesus. And that's true. Absolutely true. And there is a overcorrection to that says, no, you all need PhDs and, we should never have the Bible in the hands of common folk. You can see where
people come to that conclusion also.
Well, it's simply, I don't know that we've been taught well what the Bible is and how the Bible works.
100%.
And so we're left reading it like we read everything else. So there is a New Testament parallel for this. When the crowds go out to receive Jesus as he's coming in for his triumphal entry, and then they escort him into the city. It's not called a parousia, but that's kind of the picture, is that a whole city would turn out for a foreign dignitary, escort them back. They would meet them outside the city, escort them back into the city, throw a celebration to show them all was prepared. So I think what Paul's indicating is that the picture that we're going to get about the dead in Christ is that Jesus comes with them. Those of us who are alive meet him in the sphere of authority called the air as his possession, and then escort him to the earth that has always been rightfully his. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the picture. Now, there's another text about one being taken away and the other left. And this comes in Matthew. And there's a parallel version in Mark and a smaller parallel version in Luke. So I'm going to read Matthew's version, but I'm going to reference Luke's version. Matthew 24 opens with Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. "Do you see all these things?" Jesus asked. "Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Now, the sign of your coming and the end of the age is in direct reference to the destruction of the temple. It's not asking, "Hey, Jesus, when are you going to come and take us all to heaven?" Or when is the rapture happening? The question is, they are like, "Hey, look how beautiful the temple is." Jesus is like, "Let me just tell you right now, guys, every one of these stones is going to be thrown down." And they're like, "What?" And so they use the language available to them, which was the sign of your coming and the end of the age.
Yep.
So Jesus goes on and on, painting pictures for them. And he gets to verse 36. And this is such a cobweb of amazing things to talk about. But at verse 36, he says, "But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." Now, we hear this and we instantly think we're talking about the second coming. That is not at all the context for what Jesus is talking about. "For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. This is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a handmill, one will be taken and the other left." All right. Total rapture right here. It's like, oh yeah, the days of Noah. And people, I just read, or I saw a guy literally on Instagram, I got to quit clicking on this stuff, saying these are the days of Noah. So first of all, Jesus is not talking about his return as Christians talk about it. He's talking about like the coming of the Son of Man in the Daniel 7 sense in judgment over Jerusalem. All right. That happened when the Zealots picked a fight with Rome, and there was a 4-year war that culminated in the utter destruction of the city. But notice here the parallel that Jesus draws. Let's say this was about us for a second. Notice the parallel that Jesus draws. He says, okay, it'll be just like it was in the days of Noah. Well, what were the days of Noah? Well, everyone was just living human life. And then all of a sudden, Noah entered the ark. They knew nothing about what would happen till the flood came and took them away. So is taking them away in the flood story a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
Correct. Taking them away means they were subject to judgment. Right? Mm-hmm. The ones who were left, Noah and his family, were the ones that were shown grace and mercy. So when we use and Jesus then says, and it will be just like that, like in the days of Noah, 2 men will be, doing something. One will be taken and the other will be left. Our Left Behind folks say the left behind one is the bad one. But the context in the parallel to Noah clearly suggests that the left behind one is the blessed one. Yeah. And it's the taken one that's the bad one. And when Rome did invade Israel, they would take people and crucify them on crosses, take them as slaves, do all of the horrible Roman things they would do.
Yeah.
Now, I see the look in your eyes, Timothy, before you get to whatever question is brewing behind that beautiful face, in case there's any doubt about this interpretation of Matthew, in Luke's account, Luke gives us one extra word. And so in Luke 17, I tell you, Jesus says, on that night, two people will be in one bed. One will be taken and the other left. Two women will be grinding grain together. One will be taken and the other left. Our interpretation of Matthew is being taken is bad and being left is good. And that is absolutely what happens in the case of Noah too. Now, the disciples in Luke's version ask, where, Lord? Where are they taken? Because he says, two people will be in one bed, one will be taken, the other left. Where, Lord? Where? And then he replied, where there is a dead body, there the vultures will gather. Does that sound like heavenly bliss to you, or does that sound like judgment?
Yeah, it doesn't sound great.
Of course, it's a Jewish picture of judgment, an aphorism of judgment. Now, so I just want to suggest, not because I'm smart, but because there are people who are much smarter who've been shouting these things at American culture for years, that the rapture is one of the flimsiest pieces of theology.
But one of the most broadly used.
Oh, and used for what? It's never used to comfort.
Never.
It's used to, comfort,
yeah.
I guess maybe in the sense like the questioner asked about, isn't it great we get out of here and we get to watch all those unbelievers suffer?
Yeah.
So maybe comfort in that sense. But, oh my Lord, I just think, and I try to be moderate because I'm a man prone to hyperbole. But the way Revelation has been used to bring so much harm and fear, it really frosts my nuggets. I don't even know what that is a picture of. But I'm
I don't think I've heard that one before.
I'm upset, Tim. I'm upset that I wasted, I don't know, 10 years of my life believing this, and no one that I knew ever saying, hey, maybe this isn't congruent with, I'm just so bummed. And so, like we say a whole bunch of things. Good theology doesn't save us. The goal of the Christian life is not good theology, but bad theology does harm us.
Totally.
So that's why theology matters. But also, you don't have to agree. The goal of this whole podcast, one of the best compliments we get from people, and it's repeated so often we don't even kind of notice it anymore, is people will email in and say, hey, listen regularly, and I disagree with a lot of what you guys say.
Yeah.
That is the kindest, most thoughtful and gentle compliment you can give us, because the goal isn't that you would agree, right? I'm not trying to sell the Mike Erre, Tim Stafford version of Christianity, right? Who needs another version?
Right.
I mean, to some degree, we're all stuck with a version. I got that. But there is a sense in which if we can provoke curiosity and conversation and wonder and awe and, oh my goodness, maybe it's better than we thought. Like, that's the point. That's the point.
Totally.
And this book of the Bible has been so hijacked and so corrupted to do the exact opposite of that. I stand against that with like all that I've got, not because people are malicious or people are seeking to harm or any of those sorts of things, but rather because I think that for some reason we got it into our heads that the Bible is a code book and a rule book, and it can only be understood in this one way, and to doubt one piece of it means the whole thing's going to crumble. And I just don't, and so like we're doing at Journey, the church where I'm a teaching pastor, we're doing the book of Genesis, and we're 3 weeks in and we've gotten 3 words in, or 4 words in, and And again, here's another piece of text that has so much ink spilled around it, right? And then when you look at it, I don't know that it in any way tries to answer any of the questions we keep pressing it for.
Right.
And what's true of Genesis and Revelation, I think, is often true of the whole Bible. That what we're bringing is a whole brand of American individualized Christianity to a text that is none of those things. And then wondering, well, how come it's not working? Or how come it isn't beautiful? Or how come God looks jacked up? Or why are people leaving? Because I don't know. I mean, at least for me, I don't know that I ever really encountered the real Jesus through all of this murk.
No.
I think he's big enough and good enough that he can use it. Of course. Hallelujah, that he doesn't need perfect theology to reach us. But in another sense, I was never excited about following Jesus until I began to understand the broader picture of his humanity and the invitation of him and God and the Spirit of followers of Jesus, to participate in this incredible renewing work.
Yeah, Jesus might not need perfect theology to meet us, but it's awfully helpful for us to have good theology to meet one another. And I think that's where we get so tripped up on.
Hey, Tim.
What?
That's the smartest thing you have said in the last 5 minutes.
Well, I haven't said anything in the last 5 minutes. So
Exactly.
there we go. We'll take it in balance.
That's so good.
But we do I really when I was a little kid, I used to pray all the time that Jesus would pull a fast one and just let everybody in. And that we'd all get to the gate and he's just like, you know what? I'm bigger than all of this and I forgive you and you guys are all coming in. I used to pray that all the time when I was a little kid.
Oh my goodness.
And now when I see I don't think people are born evil, but I do think evil influences us nonstop. And so when you look at exclusive or theology that excludes other people, exclusionary theology,
I don't know.
I don't see Jesus in that, and it bugs me. And so this rapture stuff that we kind of grew up in that was fear-based, but is comforting to those that are sitting in the pews because oh yeah, we joined the right team.
Right.
Sucks for those guys outside, but we're on the ship, we're on the boat, to flip that metaphor the wrong way. We're on the boat being, I don't know. I just think it's, and I love that. I am so thankful for the disciples for asking what seem to us now dumb questions, but for then were the exact right questions to ask and to help clarify theologies and ideas that we need those disciples now that are asking those questions about our inherited theology so that Jesus can kind of wipe the table clean and be like, nope, this is, so that's when you're this is a Mike and Tim's new version of theology. This is us trying to clear all that junk out of the way to see what the real, to see what the truth is.
Even recognizing that we can't, we cannot transcend our cultural setting. Granted.
100%.
Or the limitations of our language. Yes. But we can work to be more faithful at hearing the text the way it would have originally been heard.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, right?
Big.
And so we want to walk this line between humbly receiving the text and holding things open. I don't think the point is just conversation. I saw somebody that we all know and respect was just talking about, the goal of theology is conversation. And in one sense, I agree, and in one sense, I disagree. In the sense I agree with is your just genius statement that our theology matters in how we come at people and treat people. Man, that's true. So in that sense, a theology that leads the conversation is way better. But you also have this insistence by the authors of the Gospels, for instance, that there's something you can grab a hold of here that isn't just their opinion.
Yep.
And that once you grab a hold of it, it's worth hanging on to. The goal isn't just perpetual conversation. The goal is leading to a place where you grab a hold of Jesus in non-cliched ways. And I think, that's the dance we are always trying to do. We're always trying to leave room for all of the opinions and all of the harm and all of the takes that are out there, and say, yes, they're all welcome. But I think there's something to hang on to here. I think there's something to kind of, to grasp a hold of that is worth grasping a hold of, and that I think leads us to better and further conversation, but from a different posture, from a centered posture, not always a bounded, sort of posture.
More humble posture.
Well, that's the goal, right? If you really believe Jesus is like this, then how in the world could we go into any text thinking we've got it figured out at the beginning?
Well, is it in Luke? Is the don't tie, like the not causing these children to stumble? It'd be better to tie a millstone.
Yeah, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, I think, have a bit of that.
And then when you were talking about like just some of this rapture theology or something, I started to feel like I was the kid in that scenario, and so much of the bad theology that I've used to harm people, that has harmed me over the years, that's the verse that popped in my head for some reason. I was like, you should tie a millstone. What you're teaching the kids in these generations to harm other people, you might as well like just go jump in get out of the way. Like, just be quiet.
Yeah. And I wonder if every generation of believers doesn't have their own way as we correct and overcorrect. But no, I do think, we don't want to overemphasize theology to the place where it's the only point is being right. And no one ever says that, but we certainly do act like it.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, I don't think we can minimize the harm it does. I love, man, what you just said, bro, is really, really profound. I'm gonna chew on that. Good theology doesn't save us, but bad theology harms us in how we approach each other. Right? Because we internalize whatever our view of God is, right? If our God is, a God of wrath and fire and whatever, then man, hallelujah, look at the people going to get some of this.
Well, when you have a Messiah complex, that tends to both spill over in what you consider to be positive and what you consider to be negative. Like you're now the harbinger of judgment as well as the harbinger of salvation, and it's like you're not either.
Yeah. Because you can hear the judgment passages, and I've done both of these. So one extreme is where you're like, dude, I don't even know if I'm in. Like, I'm terrified. Like, what good thing do I have to do? How many times do I have to pray the prayer?
1,000.
I'm terrified of not being in.
Yeah.
And then there's the other extreme of, dude, I'm so in. Those freaking suckers. How could they not get this? Those damn atheists,
right?
And whatever else, they're going to get theirs, and it's going to be awesome. And so there's the obsessing on me when it comes to the judgment text, and then there's the obsessing on others, and then there's, I think where I'm at now, and I think where you're at now, is this like just deep and yearning hope that the evil that I see in me and outside of me will be dealt with finally once and for all.
Yeah.
And that somehow, in some way, because I'm a purveyor as well as a victim of that evil, that those of us who are all purveyors and victims can stand.
That's why that cancer is such a great example, and why when you said it, like it was percolating in my head too, of like this thing that invades us and literally eats away our humanity, and eventually brings death. So it's like cancers are kind of a great example for sin and death, and that like weird and you want that cut out, and sometimes that judgment or whatever is a really painful thing.
But the only thing lacking in that is if somebody killed, so let's say a shooter shows up at Seth's school and shoots Seth and other children, there would be, the cancer is too impersonal at that point. Now there's a face and a name. And then there would be faces and names around Congress people who've not acted, and elected officials. Like my hatred would be very personal at that point.
Yeah,
Totally. And the cancer analogy doesn't quite capture that.
Yeah.
But it still is that how God feels. Even when you get Cain, Your Abel's blood is crying from the ground.
Yeah.
He shows him mercy.
Yeah.
Like he comes to him and says, Cain, don't give in. It's just so, I don't
Well, and that's
get
the
it.
angry,
I don't get it.
judgmental God that we all don't know how to deal with too, or whatever. That's early Old
Well,
Testament
we
God.
prefer it. We would prefer it.
Well, it's black
clear
and white.
that
Yeah,
way.
Totally.
Yes, it's clearer that way. Absolutely. Mercy, and that's why Jesus' parables were so jacked, is that they were just these unexpected rises of mercy where you should expect justice. And when justice did come, it was against the people who the world would say never are the blessed ones, Mm-hmm. All right, we're out. We could go on for hours.
It's the never-ending nesting doll.
Never-ending nesting doll. That's our new band name.
And then.
Hey, we love you guys. Thank you. You're awesome. Seriously.
People listening.
Yeah. Again, the goal's 12.
The goal is soul.
Yeah. One of the things, is that a movie reference?
No, Bono used to say it playing live when they played a specific song. They're opening the U2 Vegas Sphere opens today. I got tickets in November.
Oh, look at you go. Awesome. All right. On that note, that will be Tim's thumbs up in November. Till next time, folks, have a great rest of your week. We'll see ya.
Try not to get raptured, or maybe try.
Yeah. Well.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Voxology is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners just like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology. You can also join the community and hang out and chat with us on the socials. Facebook.com/Voxology Podcast and on Instagram @Voxology. Thank you for walking the long road with us.